In an alternate 1899, Monique, resident for as long as she can remember at Shrewsbury Orphanage, has a strange talent which she neither understands nor can control. This talent, however, is only supposed to be possessed by men. Should she conceal her abilities in order to survive, or should she be true to herself? If she hides her gift, she will languish, yet if she reveals her true self, she will be hunted down and experimented upon by men whose talents outshine her own. So, Monique has a problem. She's an orphan. She lives in the spectacularly awful Shrewsbury Orphanage, whose master, Mr. Goldgate, is a very cruel, horrible, callous man. So she's in a really horrible situation. There she is. These covers were done by Tom Brown, the famous steampunk artist. So Tom basically did the Lursen Chance, which you can see there. So Tom did a Shrewsbury skyline, mutated it rather, and then we're going to use this backdrop for each of the 3 books in the trilogy, but Monique will, she will be a different image of Monique, or Monica, as she becomes known, in the other 2 books. So Monique is about 14, 15. She's fairly stroppy. She does things which she shouldn't do, and one of the things that she did just before this novel starts is acquire a puppy. So the orphanage has its own dog, a guard dog, and that dog, Ruff, had puppies. And so Monique hides one away, takes it upstairs, and of course is caught. So Mr. Goldgate, unfortunately, disposes of that puppy in a particularly hideous way, and Monique is forced to watch. So Monique has a really horrible life. She has one best friend, her best friend Lily, Lily is her rock. But at the start of the novel, Monique is in a really horrible situation. She's lonely, obviously she's an orphan, she has no idea what's going to happen to her. She may be sent to be a domestic at the age of 15, as happened in Victorian times. And she's just had her beautiful puppy taken away from her in the most ghastly manner by Mr. Goldgate, who she loathes. So, she's in really dire straits, and she goes to sleep that night and she just can't sleep. So she's tossing and turning, having horrible dreams, just really anguished and unhappy. And then she starts to have strange dreams, and her room is on the external wall of Shrewsbury Orphanage, so she can see down to what I've called Guildhall Street, which comes up from St John's, down near Kingsford Bridge. A brand new street which I invented for Shrewsbury. Those people who read the book will recognise much of Shrewsbury as I've used it, but I have changed various parts to free people who generally have a good time. But Guildhall Street is very different because of the French Quarter. But anyway, she can see over the railings, and there's a well just inside the railings. And as the night wears on, she notices a woman clambering out of the well. And this is kind of like 4 or 5 in the morning. She wonders who this woman is. So she's wide awake by now. She goes downstairs. And it so happens that the orphanage is expecting a new maidservant. So this woman comes out of the well, knocks at the door, and appears to be uncertain as to why she's there. And Mr. Prodrick, the grumpy, chain-smoking manservant, says, "What? Oh, are you the new maidservant then? What are you doing here? Wrong entrance, love. Come in." So she comes in, and Monique encourages her. And Monique is strangely compelled by this new arrival, who's called Helen. So as the first chapter or 2 progresses, we learn that Monique is curiously compelled to find out who Helen is, why she's come out of the well, if indeed she did. So, another main character we have in this scenario is Mr. Printer, who is the orphanage's odd job man. He turns up every afternoon. He's a bit older, he's mid-20s. He has a strange accent, which I won't do here, but I may hint at. So basically, Lily thinks that Monique should be introduced to Mr. Printer, because Mr. Printer is a painter. And he's very peculiarly painting the same thing day after day, week after week after week. He's painting a pool at the bottom of the garden orphanage, the orphanage garden. So, let's find out what's going on with these two. So this is Lily, first of all. I have decided I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Printer, said Lily. It is time someone of quality saw your watercolours. Monique is a painter. Him? Certainly not. He's a proper painter. Anyway, I don't know him, and neither do you, though you enjoy pretending you do. That is mere gossip, Lily said, a hard edge to her voice. Mr. Printer is a friend of mine, that is all. Monique looked away. Lily leaned forward, putting her hand on Monique's. This afternoon we shall finish school early, because Father Bayard is at St. Chad's, so he will not be instructing us in his wretched catechism. I shall take you to the garden the moment Mr. Printer arrives, and you and he will talk. He is a man of the world. He will know what to do. Monique shook her head. I think I can guess your true motive, she said. You rather like Mr. Printer, don't you? Monique! But, even so, why should I not? He is handsome and accomplished. Do you believe he's noticed a 14-year-old orphan? Lily frowned, and her cheeks turned pink. She sat back, raising herself so that she sat upright. That sort of comment is beneath us both, Monique, and rather cruel. He is an artist. I should think he is attuned to the natural beauty. Monique glanced at the other orphans, none of whom were paying them any attention. Mr. Broderick was knocking mud off his boots. She shrugged. So you want to become his muse, then, his model? That is improper, Lily, verging on degenerate. You know what these artists are like. Lily frowned. You're just jealous. I came here in a sincere attempt to help you, and now you mock me. She stood up. Perhaps I shall not bother to introduce you. Monique looked up at her. I'll be there, she said with a sigh. You ought to be, or I shall not forgive you. Monique offered no reply. All she wanted to do was talk with Helen. The day passed slowly. She and the other girls took writing with Mr. Ness, then a class of women's virtues with Miss Haytor, the former dull, the latter tedious. The afternoon was given over to free time, a move announced by Mr. Broderick with his usual show of vexation. Mr. Printer worked a few hours every afternoon for the orphanage, and those who noticed his presence presumed he worked elsewhere in the world. But most evenings in the spring, summer, and into the autumn, he painted during the day's dying hours. Not always in the walled garden, but often. Monique had never spoken to him. Lily, it was assumed, thought him dashing and personable, and she had conversed with him. At 3 o'clock, Lily led Monique out into the autumn sunshine. Monique carried a selection of her paintings wrapped in a cloth. They walked arm in arm to the door in the brick wall, outside the orphanage garden, where Lily pointed. There he is, inside. Monique observed. He's mending the wall. We'd better not disturb him. That is his job, Lily said in an exasperated voice. He does all the work round the orphanage that Mr. Broderick cannot do. Monique felt nervous. No adult had seen their paintings, let alone a real artist. I'm not sure about this. Lily squeezed her arm and dragged her through the doorway into the garden. The sound of Monique's shoes scraping on the gravel as she resisted alerted Mr. Printer to their presence, and he gave them a friendly wave. Look, Monique said, he's set up his easel. He always does that first thing. It means he plans to remain here today and paint. I should think so too. What a gorgeous day. Why, it is almost like summer again. Monique whimpered as Lily pulled her along the gravel path towards Mr. Printer. When they approached, he turned, mopped his brow with his sleeve and said, Good afternoon, Mademoiselle. It is beautiful weather today, is it not? Indeed it is, Mr. Printer, replied Lily. May I introduce my friend Monique? Ah, thank you. Yes, I see Monique yesterday, and you also. But Monique was upset, was she not? Monique looked away, unsure how to answer. She's feeling much better now, said Lily. Are you mending the wall? Yes, it is broken with the mortar between the stones, you know. So Mr. Broderick asked me to mend it. Told you, more like, Lily said with a smirk. He is not so bad. He is one of those men who is too lazy to be a tyrant. We get on well enough. Monique studied Mr. Printer as he spoke. His relaxed manner put her at ease. She thought he must be in his mid-20s, tall, with receding hair, and a short, razor-sculpted beard left long at the chin. A black silk tie lay wound around his high collar. She smiled at him. He was rather handsome. Are you both free now? He asked. Surely the classes are not over already. The father has gone to St. Chad's, Lily explained. Yes, that is my church. So you will explore the garden today. It looks bedraggled and brown with all the seed coming and the leaves dropping. I'm going back into the orphanage now, Lily replied. But Monique has something to show you. Monique clung to Lily as she turned away. No, Lily, you mustn't leave me alone here. Shush, show me your pictures. I shall return soon enough. Monique stared as Lily hurried away. This was all part of Lily's plan, she realised, leaving her alone so that the top of the painting was bound to arise. What pictures are these, Mr. Printer asked. Monique turned to face him, clasping her cloth-wrapped package. Oh, it's nothing really. Lily has this strange idea. Will you let me look at them? He gestured at the canvas on his easel. I am the artist, as you see. Perhaps therefore I can advise you. I'd be ashamed to show anyone such flimsy work, Monique said. Probably it'd be better if I left it to your watering. Nonsense! I will seize these works. A dear friend of mine, Issei, I am good at only two things, and those are gardening and painting. But I don't paint the garden, said Monique. Please, allow me, said Mr. Printer, leaning over to take the package. He unwrapped the cloth and flung it away. His eyes became round. Monique watched, unable to breathe. He looked at the second painting. Monique exhaled. You see now, she said, they're not very good. But this is truly your work? He asked. Yes. But these are exceptional. I ask again, these are yours? Monique peered over to see which paintings he had viewed. Those two are scenes through my window, she said. Quickly he browsed the rest of the watercolours. But Monique, I tell you, you have something here. What it is, I cannot say, but it is something. Monique wanted to run away, yet she could not help being intrigued. Honestly, I don't know what you mean, she murmured. The goal of the modern artist is to create living work. We wish to create images which have motion inside the mind of the viewer, like the new moving pictures, you know. Your work, to rampage through my mind. These are all you have? Monique replied, I may keep a few more in my room, but these are not with frames. Where do you store your work? On the floor. Mr. Printer stared at her. On the floor? Sacrilege! Now Monique felt a little frightened. Please, I'm not sure. I don't... He handed back the watercolours. Apologies, I have been too intense. But it is my manner, you know. My dear friend, Issei, I would like to paint the way a bird sings. Such is the way of the artist, with unashamed passion, without thinking. Are you also with this way? Monique pondered the question. I don't really paint. It's my phone, sorry. I thought I turned it off on a hand. Let's just leave it. Monique pondered the question. I don't really paint. I feel my paintings as they come onto the paper. Often I don't remember actually doing the work, though I see myself doing it. They appear before me. It's difficult to explain. He studied her, scratching his beard with one hand. Monique glanced at the easel. Is that your current painting? She asked. He glanced over. Yes, it is. A view of the bulrushes around the pool. Monique strolled over to the easel to view the painting. It was complete, a study in brown, yellow and white, made with daubs all distinct from one another, as if splashed on by a child. This looks... He laughed. It is the modern way, Impressionism. Do you like it? Monique leaned over to study the signature. But it's finished, she asked. So I thought, but yesterday I think, perhaps no, who knows? So I brought the work back to its home. What do you say? Monique stepped back. It's beautiful. You catch a light somehow. She pointed at the corner. Why did you sign it twice? Oh, indeed, why? He chuckled. A foible, a whim, it is nothing. Monique looked more closely. Above a name, she saw Mr. Printer in capital letters, but it was difficult to say if the second letter was an R or an A. Is that your real name? She asked, pointing to the other signature. He laughed again in a higher pitch. You may call me Henry, he said. Monique felt her face become warm. In private, perhaps, she murmured. Then outdoors, Mr. Printer must suffice. So, what will you do with such exceptional work? She looked up at him. He was watching her, studying her. What would you advise, she asked. Such was Lily's purpose in bringing me here, to find out what I should do next with my life. But she is the perceptive one, you know. She noticed whatever it is you have inside. Perhaps. Mr. Printer nodded. Listen to me, Monique. We shall make an experiment. Will you follow me into the marsh? Wouldn't that be dangerous? In wet weather, perhaps. But in summer, even autumn, we may jump across little marshes on clumps of reed, like the heron. Is there a path? Asked Monique. You may see it, if only you look. Be wary of seeing what you expect to see. Find novelty, find truth in nature. You believe this to be a marsh, but is it really? To know the truth, you must find out, you must experience. Open yourself up, like the songbird. Monique found herself compelled by his manner, by his enthusiasm. She studied the marsh to see a line of high reed clumps beside which golden iris stood. I think that must be a path, she said, pointing. I feel it could be safe. Then we shall leap like herons. Follow me. He ran towards the edge of the marsh, stopping when his boots sank into water, gesturing her to hurry with swirling motions of his arm. Be swift. Monique laughed. Like the bird swift. Indeed, like the bird which is swift. Monique did not know if he grasped her jest, but already it was too late to check. He was jumping from clump to clump, and she followed. A dry autumn had reduced the water level, but she noticed that the pool remained unchanged in the far corner, gleaming blue-white beneath billowing cumulus clouds. A moss-covered mound lay next to the water, on which Mr. Printer sat cross-legged. Monique, aware of her dress and of her modesty, remained standing. The petals of the iris nearby looked like golden wings. This is an unusual pool, he told her. Do not look yet. But tell me, you have never been here before? Of course not, Monique replied. I had no idea it could be reached. All the orphans are warned to avoid the swamp. Indeed, the marsh is here because the orphanage is on the slope, but this great wall forbids the draining. But, as I mentioned, you see, this is a special pool. Will you look into it? Why should I? But I think you should, you know. Yes, why not? Who knows what you will see here? But have no preconception. Just look. Monique hesitated. If you insist, she said, hoping he might halt the experiment. I do, he replied, gazing up at her. Now he appeared entirely serious. Monique walked to the edge of the mound and leaned over the water. She looked down to see blue sky, empty of clouds. Of her own reflection, she saw nothing. Then, almost too quick to notice, a dark flicker of movement, an animal leaping over the pool, a flash of ruddy fur, then gone. She gasped and stood back. What is this place? She asked. His manner changed. He became solemn, earnest, studying the water. But should I speak? Maybe, or maybe not. Yet the girl asked something. Do you talk to me? Monique asked. He looked up at her. Tell me, he said, do you know what a reifier is? Monique had heard the term before, but she knew nothing more. I know there is a shop in the circus where reifiers work. What they do, there are rumours. I believe they have a guild. Indeed they do. But a reifier is a special case. A reifier, he has the ability to make real his ideas, his fancies. Those objects inside his mind, he can make them appear in the world around us. It is a conjuring art, fantastic. And as you say, there are always rumours. What rumours? Mr. Printer stared at the sky for a few moments. If a man become a reifier, he must pay a considerable price. Indeed. He shook his head. A price so heavy, many will not accept, even if they are tempted by the power of reification. Monique found herself compelled by his tone, which was unlike anything she had heard before. What price? She whispered. What price? To impose his will upon the world, a reifier must put himself above the world, must believe his mind take primacy over the world. Such is not the way of common people, you see, because our thoughts, they do not precede the world, do they? We do not work or live for such intense domination. We accept, we shrug. So, therefore, a reifier must be the extreme of selfishness. To place the object of his mind into the natural world, the reifier must deny that world. He must say, I, the reifier, am more important than the world, and therefore I will have my way. So you see, it is the extremity of selfishness which is the price to pay. Amazed, Monique stared at him. And are you a reifier, she asked. Is that what this pool is, someone's idle fancy, even yours? I am the opposite of a reifier, he declared. His voice turned cold. No man may ever call me such a thing. Nature is all, and I, like every artist, like you also, we live inside it. The world takes precedence over us, Monique. Do you not agree? I do agree, Monique replied. Then, what's this pool? Is it yours? It is nobody's, but, as I say, it is special. He jumped to his feet. Come now, we have spoken much. Too much, perhaps. You should keep our conversation silent, please. All knowledge is dangerous, you know. Monique shuddered. She felt apprehensive. The light, happy tone of the afternoon had turned bitter. But you frighten me now, she said. And why did you tell me all this? Did my watercolours inspire you to? He shrugged. I cannot deny that they did. But I'm not a reifier. He led her along the path, turning at the edge of the swamp to face her. Indeed, no, for you are of the gentler sex. A reifier is a man. Monique frowned. But of course, it is the place of men to perform such work. You mean there can't be a female reifier? Mr. Printer looked at her. It is presumed non-listed that the Reifiers Guild at Kew in London. Monique nodded. The statement seemed obvious to her, yet she retained a feeling of anxiety. Something in her watercolours had inspired this entire conversation. I wish you'd tell me the truth, she said. You've quite taken my breath away. If art is not reification, what is it? He nodded, staring at her. So, indeed, you do have something. You see, you understand, do you not? Yes, as you say, art, it is following nature, yet interpreting it also. It is the opposite of reification, perhaps. Yet to make a painting, we grasp what is inside our mind. We splash it out upon the canvas. My dear friend, you say, my only desire is an intimate infusion with nature, and the only fate I wish is to have worked and lived in harmony with her laws. Yes, what indeed is the difference, Monique? But you should come to your own conclusion, I think. You must, perhaps. Who can say yet? Though I will be here to assist you. He glanced up at the dark walls of the orphanage. I have been here for some years now. Monique sensed a strange undercurrent in his speech. In Shrewsbury, she asked. He nodded. And you? I've never known any place other than the orphanage. So far as I know, I've been here all my life. My earliest memories being soaked in cold water in the washroom. I must have been 3, 4. One Aussie, I thought it is to be expected. He glanced at the garden wall. You should go now. Mr. Broderick, he will shout at me if I do not complete my motto. But you must return them. We will speak much.
Merci beaucoup.
Right.